I think we all know how expensive it can be to try to constantly keep your rental up to modern day standards. Thankfully, there are a few tips and hacks that you can do to increase the value of your rental without landing in the poorhouse over it all. In this podcast, we'll dive right into some of the more creative and affordable ways to instantly increase the value of your rental. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another value-packed TenantCloud podcast. If you want to be a more informed, better educated, and successful landlord, then stay tuned. With over a decade of property management experience, we bring you short and sweet, bite-sized pieces of incredibly valuable property management tidbits in 15 minutes or less. In this podcast, like we just said, we're going to cover the affordable ways to increase the value of your rental. The value of your rental depends on a range of factors, including things like its size, its overall condition, where it's located, and many other things. But if you're trying to maximize the return on the investment of your rental properties, then you need to find effective ways to enhance the value of the rental without spending a fortune on it. So you could add a 2-car garage, you could renovate a bedroom, you could install kitchen appliances that are brand new, state of the art, but those things can get really expensive really quick. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in with the number one thing that is the easiest way to increase the value of your rental property. That thing is you want to start with the landscape. The lawn is the first thing that your potential tenants are going to see, and it's the first thing that is going to be that first impression. It is that first 30 seconds that they talk about when you meet somebody for the first time. And in this case, it's your rental property, and it is somebody who is potentially considering applying for that rental. And so making sure that your lawn isn't overgrown with grass or weeds or flowers that don't make any sense, or just poorly trimmed trees or trees that aren't trimmed at all, bushes in front of the house that are out of control, that type of thing. It doesn't say that you care about your rental property, and it doesn't say much about the management of the rental property. As opposed to if somebody comes up to the front of a house and everything is well trimmed, the lawn is edged, there's no weeds, the trees and the bushes are all trimmed nicely and shaped up, they're not overgrown, covering windows, that type of thing. There's no leaves falling out of the gutter. It's a stark difference between those two things, and it makes a huge difference for your rental property when somebody can come up to the rental property and see it as they're walking up and being like, wow, this is a really well taken care of property. And so it's that first impression that will always create that extra value in your rental and will immediately help you command a higher price point, especially if other local competitors who have rental properties are not doing the same thing and are not keeping their property up to the same standards that you are. So that's the first thing, is you want to make sure that your landscaping is on point, and it doesn't cost a lot of money to make sure that that happens. In fact, if you have the time and the tools to do it yourself, it's definitely worth it. The second thing is you want to create a great first impression, not only with your curb appeal, but also when you walk up to the front door and you open up the front door. In real estate, one of the ways that people who are touring a rental will help a person take ownership, similar to when you go to a dealership and they tell you here, you want to take the keys and you can take it out for a spin. They're giving you ownership of the vehicle. They're allowing you to take control of the car. You open the door, you sit inside, you turn it on, you hear that engine roar up, you get that new car smell. It's the same thing in property rentals. You want the person to have the key to open it up the door, swing it open, and have that first impression as if they're coming home from a long day at work and they want to just come home and relax. And so with that being said, you want to make sure that you are creating a great first impression, not just an okay first impression, because anybody can create an okay first impression. All your competitors up and down the street are creating an okay first impression. You want to make sure that your rental stands out. So there's a few things you can do. The first thing is you might consider, even though it's a vacant rental, is have a welcome mat. Make sure that the patio is dusted and swept, and make sure there aren't any bees nests in the area where they're entering the house. Make sure that the gutter has been cleaned and there's not water dripping from it right where they're stepping onto the patio, that type of thing. You also want to make sure that everything is touched up with paint at the front of the house. So make sure there's no chipped wood or anything on the door or the siding or the trim around the door. And maybe even touch up the hinges to make sure that the door doesn't really squeak. Make sure it's a nice, smooth opening into the house. And put a mat on the inside or on the outside so they can wipe their shoes so they're not tracking in dirt into this nice, clean rental. And there's a few other things you can do on the inside of the house. On the inside of the house, if you haven't staged it, at the very least, what you would want to do is maybe put something in the refrigerator. So when they go to open the refrigerator, maybe there's drinks in there, bottles of water or candy or something else that might commonly be in a fridge that somebody in their own home would keep in the fridge and go and grab a snack or a drink out of there. And so those are a few things that you can do to create that great first impression. And even if, like I said, you haven't fully staged the rental unit, those are some small things that you can do to really help put that nice little touch as a great first impression on your rental property. The third thing that you may consider doing is some minor kitchen improvements. And what I mean by kitchen improvements is not a full-blown kitchen renovation. There are some things that you can do with your rental, with your kitchen, that are still kind of like a renovation, but they don't come with the same cost. And what I mean by that is maybe consider bringing your kitchen doors up to modern standards. Maybe it's just a simple matter of switching out hinges or just switching out the handles from maybe they're an older like copper style or something like that, or just a nickel plated something or other. Maybe you want to bring it up to like the farmhouse style where if the cabinets are white, maybe you put on the black handles and the black hinges or something like that. If you don't have a backsplash, that's another relatively cheap way to spruce up your kitchen space, and put a backsplash in the kitchen so that it really brings up your kitchen to modern standards and expectations. And nobody wants to have grease splashing up against a painted wall. It's a pain to keep clean. And so that's one of the things that I personally look for in a kitchen is, does it have a backsplash that's going to protect from the grease splashes and stuff from when I'm cooking and things like that. And the last but not least, a few other ways you can do it is maybe consider something like crown molding, or maybe touching up the kick plates that are underneath the cabinets. A lot of times people's eyes are drawn to the lines in the room. And so believe it or not, one of those lines in your kitchen, especially if you have a view from a little bit of a distance from the kitchen, is going to be the kick plates or baseboards, whatever you want to call them, underneath the kitchen cabinets. And if they're gross or dirty or they're scuffed up, a lot of times people's eyes are drawn to that type of thing. So you want to make sure that you have those touched up, painted, and make sure that it just presents a nice clean lines in the kitchen. And maybe just the baseboards in the kitchen or throughout the house. Baseboards, again, are not a super expensive thing to do. And if yours are outdated and old, maybe they're the really small, thin ones from back in the 80s, but now the popular ones are the really tall ones with either the flat edges or the nice design on the top, the nice beveled edge. So these are all little things that you can do, and it's really up to you how expensive you go and how intricate you go in it. But the whole goal is to make minor improvements that don't cost a ton of money, but are going to get you a better return in the short term. So whether that's a 6-month return or a 12-month return, you just want to focus on creating that great first impression for your rental, both inside and outside, so that it sets you apart from all of your competitors in your local market. As always, we want to thank you for joining TenantCloud for another podcast. We enjoy spending time with you, and we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. We hope that the things that we've discussed have added value to your management company and to your rental properties and your rental management styles. And for further information, if you want to follow us, you can follow us wherever you hear this podcast, whether that's on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify. We're all over. Wherever you can listen to podcasts, you can find the TenantCloud podcast. Be sure to like us. And if you have time, go ahead and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps other people discover this podcast. And also, if you want to read more about topics like this, you can go to tenantcloud.com/blog, and you will find all of our blogs on there where many of these podcasts are based off of. As well as if you are a TenantCloud user, you can join our exclusive Facebook group specifically for TenantCloud users by searching for TenantCloud on Facebook.